It started on a Tuesday morning with expensive coffee and a sentence I knew would either save my marriage or end it. I'm a corporate lawyer, financial compliance, the kind of work where one careless conflict of interest can burn an entire career to the ground. My husband, Ryan, was a marketing director at a mid-sized firm, 8 years married. 8 years of learning each other's rhythms, habits, blind spots. 8 years of me believing that if I spoke clearly, he would hear me. So I looked straight at him across the kitchen island, his phone buzzing face down beside his mug, and I said calmly, evenly, "If you invite your boss to your birthday party, our marriage is over." Not an ultimatum for drama, not jealousy, not insecurity. A warning, a boundary. The kind you draw before someone steps on a landmine and blames the explosion on bad luck. Ryan didn't even blink. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh, an honest, theatrical laugh, head tipped back like I'd just performed stand-up in my own kitchen. "Relax, Danielle," he said, already scrolling. "She's just my mentor." Mentor. He said it like Kendra Patterson, his boss, was some visionary saint who floated down from corporate heaven to bless his career. But I'd seen the midnight messages. "Wear the navy suit tomorrow," my favorite. "You were electric in that meeting. Don't let anyone steal you from me." And the worst part? Ryan wasn't the type to hide things well. He wasn't calculating. He was naive in the most dangerous way. He mistook attention for admiration, every compliment for respect, every lingering look for professional validation. And when I tried to point it out, he'd sigh like I was being dramatic, like I didn't understand office dynamics. What Ryan didn't know, because he never cared to ask beyond polite dinner table questions, was that Patterson Marketing Group had just landed on my firm's radar. Quiet whispers, financial red flags, a preliminary review. And I had been assigned to that file. So when my husband decided to publicly celebrate his boss in my backyard, like she was the star of his life, he wasn't just flirting with betrayal. He was dragging a live wire through our marriage, my career, and everything we'd built, smiling the whole time. And by the end of that week, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry in front of strangers. I would do what I do best. I would document. I would disclose. And I would let consequences do the talking. I'm Danielle Harrison, 34, corporate lawyer, financial compliance and ethics. The kind of lawyer people only remember exists when their lives are already on fire. I built my career on small, unglamorous habits. Reading what other people sign without thinking. Noticing patterns before they become scandals. Asking the question everyone else avoids because it makes the room uncomfortable. My work isn't flashy, but it's clean, precise. And for most of my adult life, that precision was the one place I felt safe. Ryan was never like me. He's 33, a marketing director with the kind of charm that can warm a room in under a minute. He makes strangers feel seen. He laughs easily. He uses his hands when he talks, wide gestures like he's painting the air. When I first met him, I remember thinking he felt like the opposite of my world, color and spontaneity and warmth. We met at a corporate fundraiser my firm sponsored. I'd gone for exactly 45 minutes, long enough to show my face, shake hands, and disappear before anyone tried to corner me into small talk. Ryan was there representing his company, wearing a suit that fit too perfectly for someone who claimed he didn't care about clothes. He caught me staring at the silent auction table like it was a war zone and said, grinning, "You look like you're about to cross-examine that champagne bottle." I should have rolled my eyes. Instead, I laughed, an actual laugh, one that surprised me as much as it surprised him. He stayed near me the rest of the night, not pushy, not needy, just present, like he could sense I was the kind of woman who needed room to breathe. We dated 2 years before we got married. Ryan liked telling people that he won me over. The truth was simpler. He made me feel chosen in a way I hadn't realized I was starving for. He'd bring me late-night takeout when I was buried in case files. He'd rub my shoulders without asking what I was working on because he knew some days I couldn't speak without snapping. When he proposed, it wasn't a spectacle. No flash mob, no restaurant kneeling. Just us, in our living room, after a long week. He took my hands, looked at me like he was anchoring himself, and said, "I want a home with you. I want a life, not just a highlight reel." I believed him, and for a while, we were solid. 8 years doesn't happen without real love. We built routines, Sunday grocery runs, Wednesday takeout, the occasional weekend trip when my calendar allowed it. We shared a mortgage, shared a bed, shared a dog briefly, until we realized neither of us had enough patience for puppy teeth and we found the sweetest older rescue instead. The first cracks didn't look like betrayal. They looked like Ryan getting absorbed in work, late meetings, quick calls that turned into an hour, a new energy in him, restless, hungry, like he was finally running toward the career he'd always wanted. I was proud of him. I told him so. Then came Kendra Patterson. Ryan started mentioning her name like it belonged in every sentence. Kendra loved my pitch. Kendra says I have real leadership potential. Kendra wants me on her special projects. And every time he said it, his face changed. Subtle, almost involuntary. His eyes brightened. His posture lifted, like her approval plugged him into something electric. I tried to be supportive, I did. But support doesn't mean pretending not to see what's happening right in front of you. The texts started arriving late at night, his phone lighting up on the couch while we watched TV. He'd glance down fast, tilt the screen away from me without thinking, then force a casual smile. "What's that?" I'd ask, keeping my tone light because I refused to be the wife who interrogated. "Work," he'd say too quickly. "Just Kendra." Just. That word became a needle in my ear. I met Kendra twice. Once at a company gala where she shook my hand a second too long, eyes scanning me like she was measuring my usefulness. Another time at a team celebration dinner where she talked to Ryan like I wasn't sitting there. Leaning in close, smiling too intimately, calling him my rock and my favorite. Ryan never saw it, or he didn't want to. Because for Ryan, attention felt like proof he mattered. And for someone like Kendra, confident, polished, used to getting what she wanted, Ryan's need to be admired was an open door. By the time that Tuesday morning arrived, the coffee, the phone, face down, my voice calm but razor-edged, I wasn't making a threat. I was trying to stop the inevitable. Because I knew something else, something Ryan didn't. My firm had flagged Patterson Marketing Group for potential financial irregularities, not enough to prosecute yet, just enough to investigate, and I'd been assigned to the preliminary review team. Meaning if Ryan made Kendra a public centerpiece of his life, if he blurred those lines in front of witnesses and cameras, he wasn't only humiliating me, he was pulling me into professional quicksand. And I could already feel the ground shifting under our marriage. The week after that Tuesday felt heavier, like the air in our house had thickened without either of us naming it. Ryan threw himself into planning his birthday party with a level of enthusiasm he'd never shown for anything domestic before. He talked about it like it was a statement, not a celebration. The lighting, the guest list, the caterer, the cake design, every detail polished, deliberate, curated for an audience that extended far beyond friends and family. I watched it all from a careful distance. He sat on the couch, scrolling through Pinterest boards, showing me color palettes and centerpiece ideas like a child presenting a science project. "What do you think?" he asked, eyes bright. "I think it's elaborate," I said, choosing my words with surgical restraint. He laughed. "It's 33. It matters." What he didn't say, but I felt humming underneath, was who it mattered to. Kendra's name came up constantly. She suggested the live band. She knows this great caterer. She says backyard events photograph better than venues. Every suggestion slipped in casually, like it wasn't evidence of how deeply she'd embedded herself into our private life. I reminded him, once, clearly, that I wasn't comfortable with her attending. He waved it off. "You're overthinking this. She's just coming to support me." Support. I thought about the way she'd leaned into him at that dinner, the way her eyes lingered, the way she spoke his name like it belonged to her. And then there were the texts. Ryan never hid his phone outright. That was the problem. He'd leave it on the counter, the couch, the nightstand, screen lighting up with previews he didn't realize I could see from across the room. "Wear the navy suit tomorrow. You were incredible today. Don't let them dull you." None of them crossed a clear legal or moral line. No explicit flirting, no photos, no declarations. Just intimacy disguised as mentorship. And when I tried to explain that emotional boundaries mattered just as much as physical ones, Ryan sighed like I was exhausting him. "You don't get marketing culture," he said one night while brushing his teeth. "It's all about relationships, visibility, trust." "I understand professional boundaries," I replied, standing in the doorway. "That's literally my job." He rolled his eyes. "You're projecting your ethics stuff onto my career." That sentence lodged somewhere deep in my chest. Because ethics stuff wasn't a personality quirk. It was the backbone of my life, the thing that paid our mortgage, the thing that kept us safe, and he was dismissing it like an inconvenience. Meanwhile, my own work was getting heavier. I'd started reviewing preliminary reports on Patterson Marketing Group, nothing conclusive yet, but enough to raise my pulse. Inconsistent reporting. accounts that didn't reconcile cleanly, payments that didn't align with documented campaigns. The kind of mess that doesn't happen by accident. I hadn't told Ryan about the assignment. Not yet. Not because I was hiding it, but because I knew how he'd react. He'd panic, or worse, minimize it. And there was a conflict of interest protocol that required disclosure if things escalated. I was still within bounds, still preliminary. But the line was thin, dangerously thin. Every night that week, I lay awake listening to Ryan's breathing beside me, my mind cycling through scenarios. What if the investigation deepened? What if someone noticed the personal connection? What if photos surfaced? What if Ryan made things public in a way that forced my hand? I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to punish him. I wanted him to see. But Ryan was floating on praise and attention, high on the validation Kendra fed him in perfectly measured doses. He started dressing differently, sharper, more expensive. He bought a new jacket I knew he couldn't justify on his salary alone. When I asked, he shrugged. "It's an investment," he said. "Image matters." Even our friends noticed the shift. Monica, his friend from college, pulled me aside at dinner one night and whispered, "Is Ryan okay? He seems different." I smiled tightly. Busy. Inside, something twisted. The party loomed closer, and with it, the sense that I was watching a slow-motion collision. Ryan wasn't cheating. Not yet. Not in the way people expect. But he was crossing lines, stacking small decisions into a structure that couldn't stand. And I knew something he didn't. In my world, perception becomes evidence. And evidence becomes consequences. All it would take was one public moment, one raised glass, one poorly chosen speech, to turn private discomfort into professional disaster. I gave him one last chance to step back. He didn't take it. The night of Ryan's birthday arrived, dressed like a performance. Our backyard looked less like a home and more like a brand launch. String lights layered in careful symmetry, purple and gold uplighting, washing over the fence like a filtered sunset. 2 champagne fountains burbled beside the bar because apparently one was visually insufficient. A live band tuned their instruments under a rented canopy, rehearsing jazzy versions of pop songs that felt engineered for Instagram stories. This wasn't a party. It was content. Ryan moved through the crowd like a candidate on election night, hand on shoulders, laughter timed perfectly, eyes scanning for approval. He wore the navy suit. Of course he did. The one Kendra liked. His hair was styled with the kind of effort that pretends not to be effort. People kept telling me how lucky he was. "How supportive you are," Monica slurred at one point, already tipsy. "Most spouses would be jealous." I smiled. I nodded. My jaw ached from holding myself together. I stayed near the bar, nursing a whiskey that burned just enough to keep my hands steady. From there, I watched everything. Lawyers are trained observers. We notice patterns, body language, timing. At 8:15, the energy shifted. I saw Kendra Patterson before Ryan did. She paused at the entrance like she was waiting for applause, sunglasses still on, even though the sun had long set. She wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than our monthly utilities, hair slicked back, confidence radiating from every practice step. She carried an oversized designer gift bag, tissue paper spilling out like a staged reveal. Ryan spotted her and his face lit up. That was the moment something in me went quiet. He excused himself mid-conversation and crossed the yard too fast, too eager. They hugged, longer than necessary, bodies pressed close, familiar in a way that made nearby guests glance away like they'd intruded. She said something in his ear. He laughed. That laugh, the one he used to save for me. Then she handed him the gift like it was ceremonial, and I tightened my grip on my glass until my fingers hurt. The party continued around me in a blur, loud conversations, clinking glasses, influencers filming everything with ring lights and tripods, neighbors overdressed and uncomfortable. Ryan never left Kendra's side for long. Their proximity felt intentional, defiant. I told myself not to react. Not yet. Then Ryan climbed onto a chair. Actually climbed, stepping up like this was a campaign rally, tapping his glass until the band quieted and the crowd turned toward him. My stomach dropped. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began, voice smooth, practiced. "This year has been huge for me, professionally, personally." People clapped, phones lifted. "There's someone I need to recognize," he continued, smiling wider. "Someone who's been an incredible mentor, supporter, and friend." I already knew. "Kendra, come up here." The applause was polite but confused as she stepped forward, accepting the attention like it belonged to her. Ryan took her hand, helping her up onto the chair beside him. The gesture was intimate, automatic. He raised his glass higher. "Thank you for believing in me," he said, voice warm. "For pushing me, for seeing my potential when others didn't. I wouldn't be where I am without you." Cheers erupted, glasses clinked. The sound I heard wasn't applause. It was something inside me breaking, quietly, completely. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I felt finished. I stepped forward calmly, waited until the music swelled again, and leaned in close enough that only Ryan could hear me. "Happy birthday," I said softly. Then I turned and walked away. Not dramatically, no speech, no slammed door. I passed the caterers, the coats piled on our bed, the house I had paid for, protected, loved. Outside, the night air hit my lungs like relief. I got into my car and drove. Ryan didn't call, not that night, not the next. No text, no concern. I ended up at a 24-hour diner off the highway, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and regret. I ordered a mug that tasted like it had been brewed decades ago and watched my phone sit dark on the table. While Ryan cut cake under fairy lights, I opened my laptop. I connected through a secure VPN. And I started doing what I do best. First, our joint credit card. Frozen. Every future swipe declined. Second, my income streams rerouted to a new account I'd opened quietly a month earlier. Then, the locks. The house was mine, purchased before marriage, mortgage in my name. Changing them wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. But the real moment, the point of no return, was the email. Subject line, conflict of interest, urgent, short, professional, lethal. I disclosed a personal relationship relevant to an ongoing review. Attached evidence. The photo had already been posted online. Ryan and Kendra, hands on waists, champagne raised, smiling like a couple celebrating something private. Ambiguous enough to be defensible. Damaging enough to matter. I hovered over send for 30 seconds. Then I clicked, and for the first time in months, I breathed. I didn't feel triumphant after sending that email. That surprised me. I'd expected guilt, or adrenaline, or at least the hollow echo of doing something irreversible. Instead, what settled over me was quiet. Heavy, yes, but clean. Like a room after a storm where the air finally moves again. I checked into a hotel that night using my business card. Nothing fancy, just neutral walls, clean sheets, a lock that clicked with authority. I lay on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar hum of an HVAC unit instead of Ryan's breathing. Still no call. No, where are you? No, are you okay? No, we need to talk. I told myself not to read into it. But 4 hours passed, then 6, then morning. When dawn crept in through the curtains, I realized something I couldn't unknow. Ryan hadn't noticed my absence yet. Not really. I wasn't a missing person. I was an accessory, important only when visible. The next 3 days were silent. Ryan posted Instagram stories from the office, smiling, coffee cups, motivational quotes about growth and alignment. The party photos stayed up. Him and Kendra front and center, tagged, glowing. I watched without reacting. On Thursday afternoon, the 4th day, I went home. I took the day off work, poured a bourbon that was too expensive for 3 p.m., and sat in the living room. I'd changed the locks that morning. The new ones gleamed quietly, indifferent to what they were about to witness. I heard Ryan before I saw him. The click of heels on the walkway, the familiar confident rhythm. The door opened. He walked in like nothing had happened, dropping his bag, breathing in like he owned the place. "Did you miss me?" he asked lightly. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, watched him register that something was wrong. "Sure," I said finally, "in the way you missed jury duty." His smile faltered. Then he looked down at his key, turned it in his hand. Confusion crept in. "Danielle," he said slowly, "did you change the locks?" "Boundaries," I replied, calm. "You said they were healthy, remember?" He stood there like gravity had shifted. "I don't understand," he whispered. I gestured to the coffee table. A thick envelope sat there with his name written across it. "There's some reading material," I said. "Belated birthday gift." He picked it up carefully, like it might detonate, opened it, scanned the pages, then scanned them again. "This is our prenup," he said, "but it's different." "It's the updated version," I explained. "The one we signed during the refinance last year. You were busy. You told me you trusted me, told me to handle it." His hands shook as he flipped through. "This says I'm not entitled to anything," he whispered. "The house, your retirement, your business assets." "When we got married," I said quietly, standing, "we agreed to be partners. We agreed on respect, fidelity, priorities. I stepped closer. You broke those agreements long before I protected myself. He looked at me like I'd become someone else. You tricked me. No, I said. I followed the law, you just didn't read. That night, he stayed in the guest room. The next morning, he acted like nothing was wrong, made coffee, got dressed, kissed my cheek like muscle memory would save him. I worked from home. At 10:47 a.m., his phone rang. I heard shouting before I heard words. Kendra. Panic sharp enough to carry through walls. What do you mean lawyers? Ryan snapped. What investigation? I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just waited. Because consequences don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive with phone calls. And once they start, they don't stop. Ryan burst into the home office like the walls themselves were responsible. His face had drained of color, phone clenched in his hand, knuckles white. The confidence he'd worn like a tailored jacket all week had collapsed into something frantic and unrecognizable. Danielle, he said, voice shaking. Kendra is losing her mind. She says the company's accounts are being frozen. There are lawyers everywhere. She says this is somehow connected to us. I leaned back in my chair slowly. To us? I echoed. He swallowed. Did you? His voice cracked. Did you tell someone? I didn't answer immediately. I let him feel the silence the way I'd felt it for days. I followed protocol, I said evenly. When a potential conflict of interest exists, I'm legally required to disclose it. His eyes widened. You reported us. I disclosed a conflict, I corrected, with documentation. You went after her company, he said, panic bleeding into anger. You knew what this would do. I knew what your choices would do, I replied. I just stopped shielding you from the fallout. He paced, hands dragging through his hair. This is because of the party. You're punishing me. This isn't punishment, I said quietly. This is gravity. His phone rang again. Kendra's name lit the screen like a warning. He stared at it, then answered on speaker without thinking. Ryan, this is a disaster, Kendra shouted, her voice sharp and unfiltered. They pulled you into this. They're asking questions about our relationship, about you. Ryan looked at me, eyes wild. What are they saying? That I favored you, that our connection is inappropriate, that your wife handed them proof. Her voice dropped. Did she? I didn't speak. I didn't need to. They're freezing accounts, Kendra continued. The board's panicking. Clients are pulling contracts. You need to fix this. Ryan mouthed pleas at me. I stood. Kendra, I said calmly into the phone. This is Danielle Harrison. Silence. Oh, she said finally. You. Yes, I replied. I disclosed a conflict of interest as required by my profession. Anything discovered beyond that is outside my control. You destroyed everything, she hissed. No, I said. I documented it. The line went dead. Ryan stared at me like I'd detonated a bomb in the room. My career, he whispered. My reputation. What reputation? I asked softly. The one you built by letting your boss emotionally stake a claim on you in public? He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. The fallout accelerated fast. Within 48 hours, Patterson Marketing Group lost 2 major clients. Then another. HR flagged Ryan's profile for review. Questions started circulating about promotions, favoritism, boundaries. The story leaked. A corporate gossip blog published photos from the party with a headline dissecting professional misconduct. LinkedIn lit up. Threads exploded. People Ryan had never met debated his judgment like a case study. Memes followed. Ryan stopped sleeping. He came home furious, then desperate, then numb. He accused me of betrayal, then begged me to fix it, then threatened legal action, then collapsed into silence. Kendra showed up at the house 2 days later, eyes bloodshot, suit wrinkled, fury barely contained. This is your fault, she spat at me on the porch. You ruined everything. No, I said, blocking the doorway. You did, by forgetting boundaries matter. She turned to Ryan. I defended you. I risked everything. And yet, I said coolly, you still cooked your books. Her face froze. She left without another word. That night, Ryan received notice from HR. Suspension pending investigation. He stared at the email like it was written in another language. You could have stopped this, he said hoarsely. I tried, I replied. On Tuesday morning, over coffee. He didn't argue. Because he remembered. And now the cost was too high to ignore. The house went quiet in a way I had never heard before. Not peaceful, not calm. Hollow. Ryan stopped pretending after the suspension email. No more shouting, no more accusations. He moved through the rooms like a ghost, scrolling endlessly on his phone, watching his professional life disintegrate in real time. Every few minutes, another notification, another email, another message that started with, "We're concerned," Or, in light of recent developments, I stayed out of his way. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I had reached a place where his reactions no longer mattered more than my own survival. That realization scared me more than any fight ever had. At night, I lay awake alone in our bed. The space beside me felt vast, like an absence with weight. I replayed 8 years in fragments. The first apartment, the proposal. The nights we ate dinner on the floor because we hadn't bought furniture yet. I wondered when love had turned into management, when partnership had become supervision. Was this my fault? That question clawed at me hardest in the dark. Had I been too rigid? Too focused on rules, ethics, consequences? Had I failed to see that Ryan didn't want betrayal, he wanted validation? Was this what happened when a woman prioritized her spine over softness? Then I remembered him on that chair. Glass raised, Kendra beside him, and the question dissolved. Ryan hit his lowest point on Sunday night. He came into the kitchen smelling of whiskey, eyes glassy, shoulders slumped. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just said, "I don't know who I am without all this." I watched him carefully. This was the man I'd loved, stripped of ambition, stripped of applause, stripped of the illusion that attention equals worth. I built my whole identity around being wanted, he continued, voice cracking. By clients, by Kendra, by rooms full of people. And where did I fit into that? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. That was the answer. He slid down the cabinet until he was sitting on the floor, head in his hands. I think I ruined everything. Yes, I said gently. You did. He looked up at me then, eyes red. Can we fix it? That was the moment. The moment where I stood at the edge of myself, between the woman who could still save him and the woman who needed to save herself. I don't think this is mine to fix, I said. The words felt like betrayal and truth at the same time. He cried after that, quietly, unattractively. The kind of crying that isn't persuasive, just raw. I stayed until he fell asleep on the kitchen floor, then covered him with a blanket and went upstairs. In the bathroom, I locked the door and sank against it, breathing hard. I wasn't victorious. I was grieving. Not the marriage as it was, but the future I'd believed in. The version of him I thought would choose me when it mattered. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that hurt. This was the bottom. Not the scandal, not the memes, not the investigation. This moment, standing in a quiet house, knowing I could keep bleeding slowly, or walk away intact. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. Tired, controlled, still standing. And I knew the next step wouldn't be loud. It would be deliberate, because when a woman like me breaks, she doesn't shatter. She decides. The truth has a strange way of arriving quietly, like it doesn't need permission anymore. It came on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the party, while I was sorting through files in my home office, preparing for what I already knew was inevitable. My phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered out of habit. "Ms. Harrison," a man said. His voice was calm, professional. "This is Elliot Brooks from the Ethics Review Committee." I closed my eyes briefly. "Yes. I'm calling to inform you that you've been formally removed from the Patterson Marketing Review due to disclosed conflict of interest. I also want to thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For doing the right thing early," he said. "It saved everyone a great deal of damage." I absorbed that. "And the case?" A pause, then, "The irregularities were significant. Your disclosure accelerated our ability to act." After we hung up, I sat still for a long time. Not relieved. Validated. Later that evening, Ryan's sister Melissa showed up unannounced. She looked uncomfortable, nervous, like she'd rehearsed this conversation in the car. "I didn't want to believe it," she said once we were seated. "But people are talking. About Kendra, about Ryan." She hesitated. I saw the messages. My heart stuttered. "What messages?" She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. Screenshots. Not the vague, deniable kind. Explicit enough to remove doubt. Late-night texts. Familiar pet names. Plans that didn't pretend to be professional. "I found them on Ryan's old laptop," she said softly. "He asked me to fix something last year. I shouldn't have looked, but I did." I stared at the screen. There it was. Not innocence, not confusion. Choice. Something in my chest unclenched. "I'm sorry," Melissa whispered. "You deserve better." When she left, I didn't cry. I felt clear. That night, I told Ryan I wanted a divorce. Not in anger, not dramatically. "I'm done," I said, and I'm at peace with that. He begged, promised therapy, promised transparency, promised he'd cut Kendra out completely. I believed him. It just didn't matter anymore. The next morning, I filed. And in that moment, papers signed, boundaries final, I felt something shift. Not power, freedom. Consequences don't explode all at once. They unravel. Ryan's world collapsed in stages, slow enough to watch, fast enough to hurt. By Wednesday morning, his suspension became termination. No meeting, no appeal, just a sealed email from HR citing irreparable breach of professional conduct and failure to disclose conflicts. The language was cold, surgical, the kind I'd written myself dozens of times for other people. He read it sitting at the kitchen table, shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused. "I didn't even get to say goodbye," he whispered. I didn't respond, because goodbyes are for relationships that ended with dignity. By Friday, Kendra Patterson's name was everywhere. Her company's accounts were officially frozen pending investigation. 2 board members resigned. An internal audit revealed discrepancies that went far beyond clerical error. Bonuses were clawed back, contracts voided, investors vanished. The narrative shifted quickly. What had started as a questionable relationship became a pattern of unethical leadership. Ryan wasn't a hero in that story. He was collateral damage. And suddenly, people who once praised him stopped returning messages. Friends from work unfollowed him quietly. Invitations disappeared. His phone, once buzzing with validation, went silent in a way that mirrored my own absence weeks earlier. His parents called me once. His mother cried. His father stayed quiet. "We raised him better than this," she said. "I know," I replied gently, "but raising someone doesn't mean controlling their choices." They didn't argue, because deep down they knew. Ryan tried one last time. He showed up in the doorway while I was packing boxes, my boxes, calm, clean, efficient. "I don't hate you," he said. "I hate that you were right." "I didn't want to be," I replied. He asked if there was any chance, any version of us that survived this. I looked at him carefully. At the man who stood on a chair and praised another woman while I watched. At the man who didn't notice I was gone for 4 days. At the man who only saw the danger when it threatened him. "No," I said quietly, "because love doesn't require this much damage to be visible." He nodded. That was the last honest thing between us. The legal aftermath was brief. The prenup held. The house stayed mine. Assets protected. No courtroom drama. No public spectacle. Ryan moved into a small apartment across town. Kendra disappeared from public view entirely. And I, unexpectedly, felt not victorious. Resolved. I didn't post, I didn't explain, I didn't rewrite the narrative online. I let silence do what it always does. It told the truth. I live alone now. Not in the lonely way people fear, but in the honest way that lets you hear yourself think again. The house is quieter. Mornings move at my pace. I drink my coffee by the window instead of across from someone who stopped seeing me long before he stopped loving me. My calendar is still full. My work still demanding. But my chest feels lighter. Ryan is gone. Not erased, just placed where he belongs, in my past. I don't wish him harm. I don't replay the fallout. I don't need to. The truth handled that for me. Consequences don't require cruelty to be effective. What I learned is simple, but not easy. Love without respect is erosion. Attention is not admiration. And being chosen publicly means nothing if you're abandoned privately. I learned that boundaries are not threats. They're survival tools. That silence can be louder than screaming. And that walking away with dignity is the most powerful statement a woman can make. To anyone watching this, especially women who feel themselves shrinking to accommodate someone else's comfort, listen closely. If someone laughs when you draw a line, believe them. If they dismiss your intuition, trust it harder. And if you ever find yourself standing quietly in the corner of your own life, leave. Not with rage, with clarity. Because some people destroy you with chaos. Others reveal themselves when you stop protecting them. And I didn't win by hurting him. I won by choosing myself.